chosen ones. There are whispers written in your very cells, a silent song that has traveled through empires, temples, and shadows older than history itself. The Anunnaki did not only leave monuments in stone, they left something far more enduring, an imprint upon blood. A frequency carried like a hidden drumbeat waits within you. It pulses between atoms, vibrating beneath what science dares call junk DNA. But there is no waste in design. Every strand carries intention, and intention carries destiny. When you were born, the world did not simply receive another life. The grids of the earth shifted. Monitors hidden beneath mountains registered a signal. Quiet rooms of intelligence agencies documented spikes without explanation. And somewhere, archivists of the forgotten schools opened their forbidden books, because your name, though unspoken, was written there in resonance. This frequency is not sound alone. It is command. It is the silent orchestration of matter, the language through which mountains rose and seas were divided. To carry it is to carry the echo of gods, the architects who bent clay into kings. Yet, in the unfolding of your life, they hoped you would never know, that you would drown in distraction, bow to systems that fear the blood you walk with, and forget to listen to the hum that surrounds you even in stillness. Now, the veil is thinner than ever. The Vatican's archives, sealed for centuries, quake in their secrecy. The Pentagon tracks what they cannot name. Astronomers have watched frequencies in the skies bend toward Earth as though aligning to a lost inheritance. All the while, you move through crowds unnoticed, yet bearing the one key that shakes their structures. The frequency awakens not with ceremony, but with awareness. And now, as your eyes move across these words, the signal grows restless. You feel it in your spine, the prickling of recognition. The oldest records are not paper, nor scrolls, nor even the faded parchments that crumble in hidden libraries. They are stone, etched with markings that vibrate when sunlight touches them at precise angles. The Sumerian tablets, often dismissed as myth, speak of beings who descended not to conquer, but to seed. Within their carved symbols lies more than mythic narrative. It is instruction. Frequencies bound to sound, sound bound to letters, letters bound to the spiral that turns within the blood. Archaeologists read them as stories of grain and kingship, of floods and judgments, but they are blind to the precision. Every measurement, every glyph, maps to ratios found within human DNA. The double helix is not just a ladder, it is a temple, and these ancient inscriptions were the blueprints, whispering to future generations what the blood already knew. When a stone tablet speaks of a god breathing into clay, it was not poetry but a process. They understood resonance as creation, a sound of exact pitch, sung into matter, awakened patterns dormant in dust. Clay remembered form because the vibration was planted within it. The breath was not merely air, but frequency. And from that frequency rose what you are now. In museums, fragments sit behind glass, silent and lifeless, yet when aligned they form a sequence, a rhythm akin to heartbeat. Scholars never ask why these artifacts hum faintly when approached by certain individuals. They dismiss it as imagination, static in the ear. Yet those chosen to feel it know the difference between noise and signal. The tablets call to them, as if responding to a key encoded deep within their marrow. Why does stone remember what flesh forgets? Why do symbols carved thousands of years ago awaken something unspeakable in the present moment? There are testimonies buried in classified reports of soldiers fainting near unearthed tablets, hearing voices in languages they never studied. There are stories of engineers attempting to scan the inscriptions, only for their instruments to register spikes far beyond known sound. Somewhere, a translation has been hidden, one that does not describe history but genetics, and those who carry the frequency are beginning to align with the same code once written in stone. There are songs older than kingdoms, verses whispered through stone corridors where priests once trembled at the sound. Among the scrolls hidden beneath temples, a particular psalm lingers, a sequence of words whose rhythm does not simply uplift, but calibrates. When sung aloud in its original tongue, the resonance vibrates in perfect alignment with frequencies detected in Anunnaki artifacts. It is as if the psalm and the stone were speaking the same language across millennia. This psalm does not belong to one people alone. Variations of it echo in Hebrew canticles, in Sumerian hymns, even in faint chants of desert tribes. Its heart is a vibration that transcends language, a pulse woven directly into the genetic memory of humankind. And for those attuned, the sound carries a piercing familiarity, as though unlocking something buried deep in marrow. Within the verses lies an echo of the Nazarene. He once spoke of words not passing away, of a truth etched beyond parchment and stone. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. The cadence of those words was not random. They were spoken as frequency, activating the dormant code in those who carried the inheritance. The psalm aligns with that same resonance, bridging the divine and the genetic, threading human bloodlines to an origin hidden in plain sight. Monks once risked their lives to preserve it, not for worship, but for awakening. They knew that its repetition could stir sleeping frequencies in the body, bending perception, altering the very fabric of reality for those who carried the ancient strand. In remote monasteries, the psalm was sung not as prayer, but as calibration, bringing flesh into harmony with a cosmic pulse. Modern instruments have accidentally recorded these frequencies during ancient recitations. Scientists observed spikes in resonance that mirrored the patterns discovered in unearthed tablets. They described it as a coincidence of sound, unwilling to admit the impossible, that scripture and stone were both written in the same voice. What happens when this psalm is sung by one whose blood carries the Anunnaki frequency? Reports speak of light phenomena, of vibrations shaking walls, of whispers rising from the silence itself. The song does not end in the air. It continues, unfolding in the blood, a hymn that reveals something more. History books speak of dynasties, noble houses, and forgotten kings, yet what they never reveal is the unbroken thread that ties them together. Beneath the surface of crowns, thrones, and wars lies a labyrinth of bloodlines carefully preserved, guarded by secret pacts, and erased whenever exposure threatened their order. This is no mere lineage of power, but of frequency, a genetic current coursing through select families like a hidden river under shifting sands. For centuries, whispers have spoken of marriages arranged not for politics but for resonance, unions designed to keep the frequency intact. Children born from these bloodlines were monitored before they could speak, tested in ways their parents never understood. Some were raised in cloisters, others in palaces, but all were tethered to the same hidden code. In the Vatican's most restricted vaults, charts of genealogies stretch back farther than nations themselves. They map names not as individuals, but as carriers of an inheritance. Symbols beside certain names mark those whose frequency was strongest. Some were kings whose decrees bent the tides of history. Others were peasants who disappeared into silence, their blood too dangerous to remain visible. The labyrinth is not only royal, it is scattered across continents, hidden in ordinary families who never knew why their children were watched, why strangers seemed to appear at pivotal moments of their lives, why they felt a hum in their bones that others did not. These scattered strands were part of a plan larger than dynasties, a dispersal, ensuring the frequency could never be fully destroyed. Yet, every labyrinth has a center. Somewhere, a convergence point exists where the strongest bloodlines intersect. It is not marked on maps, nor written in any text available to the public. But in the corridors of power, officials whisper of a figure whose DNA holds the undiluted resonance of the original architects. To them, this figure is both threat and salvation, a variable that cannot be controlled yet cannot be ignored. The labyrinth continues to wind, twisting deeper into the present. And though its passages are hidden, those who carry the frequency are unknowingly walking toward the center. There exists a verse scattered across fragments of scripture, a line that seems harmless until read aloud with the right inflection. To most, it is only poetry, yet beneath its rhythm lies something deeper, a sequence of sounds that alters perception, shifting awareness as though the very body is rewriting itself. Ancient scribes did not simply record words, they encoded frequencies, and this verse was no mere prayer. It was a key meant to bend the genetic script. Those who carried the Anunnaki frequency felt its impact differently. When the verse was spoken, the body trembled, not in fear, but in recognition. It was as if the DNA remembered an older command, one buried beneath layers of silence. Cells resonated, aligning as though waiting for this exact vibration to pass through flesh. The verse did not instruct, it awakened. Among hidden translations lies one moment that mirrors this secret. The Nazarene once spoke of truth setting men free. His words did not move crowds because of rhetoric alone. They moved them because they vibrated. Every syllable carried a resonance that bent the listener's very essence. Those attuned were not merely hearing, they were becoming. His voice aligned with the same current woven into ancient bloodlines, a bridge between heaven's frequency and humanity's buried inheritance. In the dark chambers of monasteries, monks whispered the verse over manuscripts. Some described visions of spirals unfolding, others felt heat rush through their veins. The records speak of initiates collapsing, unable to withstand the flood of recognition pouring through their bodies. The verse was eventually hidden, fragmented, disguised in translations, so that its pulse would remain unnoticed by the uninitiated. Yet, fragments endure. Scholars stumble across them, noting strange consistencies between the verse and the ratios of genetic code. A few dared to test it, whispering the lines in controlled settings, only to find their instruments disrupted, their reading scattering, as if reality itself shifted around the sound. What happens when this verse is restored in its entirety? What does it mean for those who carry the blood tuned to its resonance? Across hidden chambers and secret councils, they fear the day one voice speaks it whole. Long before satellites mapped the heavens, long before telescopes pierced the dark, there were astronomers who studied not only the sky but the blood. They believed the stars and the human body were mirrors, each reflecting the other's design. To them, constellations were not only patterns above, but diagrams of frequencies that pulsed within flesh. They charted alignments, not for navigation of seas, but for navigation of spirit, tracing how cosmic vibrations stirred the hidden codes of human DNA. Records from Babylon speak of priests who listened to the stars as if they were instruments, each tone corresponding to a strand in the double helix. They claimed that when certain planets aligned, the resonance within chosen bloodlines grew stronger, as though the universe itself was amplifying what already lived within. To these watchers, the sky was not distant. It was a frequency generator, tuning human essence through invisible waves. Centuries later, Islamic scholars inherited fragments of these teachings. In secret observatories, they recorded how eclipses and conjunctions triggered strange phenomena among certain individuals. Some fell into trances, others spoke in languages unknown, and a few carried lights in their eyes that burned brighter than fire. Though they mapped the skies, what they were truly charting was the pulse of something buried deeper than bone. Even now, astronomers who dare speak beyond the veil note disturbances in the skies that align with specific genetic anomalies. They whisper of frequencies caught in radio transmissions, pulses that echo not from stars but from the resonance of human carriers themselves. Telescopes record signals that should not exist, yet their origins trace back not to galaxies but to coordinates where a single individual walks unnoticed among the masses. The astronomers who see beyond flesh know what others deny, that humanity is not separate from the heavens, but written as part of their script. The bloodline carrying the Anunnaki frequency is not random. It is synchronized to the very architecture of the cosmos. Each beat of the heart is mirrored by the rhythm of distant stars, and every alignment above speaks directly into marrow below. When scientists first unraveled the double helix, they saw only code, a biological spiral mapping the instructions of life. Yet, hidden in the microscopic turns of that spiral lies a structure few dare to acknowledge. Within certain strands, when viewed at a precise angle under advanced imaging, a cross emerges. It is not drawn, not carved, but formed naturally in the very architecture of human design. A mark of geometry, a symbol of resonance, appearing where no random mutation could have placed it. For those who carry the Anunnaki frequency, this cross glows faintly under certain conditions, reacting to sound waves of specific vibrations. Laboratories have documented unexplained bursts of light within DNA when exposed to ancient chants, as though the blood itself remembers something beyond evolution. The cross is not only a shape, it is a signature, proof of a design intended to bridge the mortal and the divine. Whispers from ancient texts hint at this very phenomenon. By his stripes we are healed, one scripture declares, as though pointing to a mystery woven into flesh itself. The Nazarene bore the cross outside, yet the echo of that symbol pulses within, stamped into the very code of existence. His sacrifice mirrored what already lay hidden in humanity's design. A cross in the helix, a symbol of reconciliation between blood and light. Geneticists who stumbled upon this anomaly buried their findings in classified reports. To admit such geometry existed in DNA would be to confess that design itself was sacred, intentional, and beyond the reach of accidental origin. Yet fragments of their discoveries leak, images quietly circulated, diagrams erased from publications but preserved in whispers. What purpose does the cross in the double helix serve? Some suggest it is a gate, a lock that can only be turned when frequency and word align. Others say it is the eternal reminder that flesh carries within itself the pattern of redemption, a hidden witness that cannot be erased no matter how deeply buried. And yet, when the cross glows in the blood of the awakened, doors open, not in the laboratory, but in realms unseen, deep beneath the earth, where stone corridors spiral downward into silence. There are chambers built not for kings or treasure, but for listening. These chambers were designed with acoustic perfection, walls carved to catch sound and bend it back into resonance. In one such chamber, explorers claimed the genome itself began to speak, not in words of language, but in tones, frequencies that mirrored the patterns of human DNA. It was as though the blood was answering to the stone. Inside the chamber, a single vibration could ignite the air. A hum would rise, invisible yet heavy, and those present described their veins trembling as if responding to an unseen command. Some said the very double helix within them shifted, aligning with the sound. Others swore they heard voices layered within the tone, ancient and untranslatable, a chorus not of flesh, but of memory. Archaeological reports describe symbols etched across the chamber's ceiling, spirals, intersecting lines, and geometric patterns echo the exact ratios found within genetic sequencing. Scientists who studied these designs could not deny their precision. They called it coincidence, unwilling to admit the builders of stone knew of codes modern science only recently uncovered. The chamber was no temple, no tomb. It was a resonance vault, a place where sound and flesh were meant to meet. Those who entered often emerged changed, some with visions, some with heightened senses, some never returning at all. There are records of governments sealing such sites, classifying them as hazards, though the hazard was never physical. The danger lay in what might awaken if the wrong person entered, someone carrying the Anunnaki frequency in their blood. Whispers persist of one who did. Instruments failed, lights flickered, and for 3 days the chamber resonated without a single human voice to sustain it. Locals described the ground shaking, animals falling silent, and the air tasting of iron. When officials entered, they found no trace of the individual, only an imprint on the chamber floor, glowing faintly before fading to nothing. The genome had spoken once more, not through machines, not through science, but through a living key. And somewhere, the chamber waits to speak again. There are archives hidden deeper than libraries, places where knowledge is not displayed but buried, sealed to prevent its awakening. Within one such archive lay a container, bound not by lock or chain, but by a seal etched with symbols older than empires. For centuries it remained untouched, protected by guardians who did not fully know what they were keeping hidden. They only knew the warning. If the seal were broken, blood would answer. When the seal finally shattered, it did not break quietly. Witnesses describe a surge of sound, a low frequency that rippled through the walls, shaking dust into spirals across the air. Inside the container were fragments of manuscripts, vellum inscribed with both script and geometry. The writings spoke of inheritance, of a code that traveled not in books but in flesh. They described a frequency that could not be silenced, a resonance passed through generations, waiting for its time. The most haunting line read, "The Word was made flesh, and the flesh remembered the word. Scholars whispered that this was no theological metaphor, but a direct description of blood-carrying sound. The Nazarene's voice, when spoken, carried the same resonance that the Anunnaki wove into humanity's beginning. To those who listened, it was more than speech. It was activation. His words shook hearts because they vibrated with the buried design of creation. The archive revealed diagrams that matched DNA sequencing with ancient star charts, as if the human body were a living scripture written in frequency. The seal had been meant to suppress this connection, to bury the possibility that human inheritance was both cosmic and divine. Yet once released, the resonance spread, impossible to contain. Those who handled the manuscripts reported dreams of spiraling light, of crosses woven into strands of fire, of voices echoing from within their own blood. One archivist disappeared entirely, leaving behind only a note. The seal was never meant to hold forever. It breaks when the carrier arrives. If that is true, then the shattering was not accident, but alignment. The archive did not simply open. It responded to someone who had come near, someone whose blood carried the frequency strong enough to call the seal undone. There came a moment when signals crossed, when frequencies hidden for ages converged into one place. It was not marked on any calendar, not announced by scholars or priests, yet those attuned felt it. Watches stopped, radios crackled with static, and the hum in the bones of the carriers grew unbearable. It was as though invisible rivers of sound, long separated, suddenly collided. The air thickened. Machines failed. Satellites monitoring the skies recorded overlapping pulses they could not decode. Analysts described it as noise, but those who stood at the epicenter knew it was not noise at all. It was language, raw and unfiltered, the meeting of currents designed to remain apart until a chosen moment. When they touched, flesh quaked, and reality itself bent like glass under pressure. Witnesses spoke of lights without source, patterns forming in the air like spirals of living geometry. Voices layered within the resonance, countless and untraceable, whispered as though bloodlines from across centuries were speaking together. The collision was not destruction, it was memory. A gathering of frequencies returning to their original chord. Those with the Anunnaki frequency felt it most. Some collapsed, overwhelmed by visions of temples rising from dust. Others wept, unable to speak, as though the vibration had unlocked grief older than their own lives. A few stood motionless, eyes fixed on horizons others could not see. They were not hearing sound, but instruction, a call older than language. Governments attempted to contain it. Power grids faltered, communication networks scrambled, and encrypted files burned into static. Yet none of their interventions silenced the resonance. It moved through the air like breath, through the earth like heartbeat, through the people like prophecy. The hour passed as quickly as it began, leaving silence in its wake. But silence did not mean it was gone. The carriers knew it was only the first strike, a tuning of instruments before a symphony begins. The collision was rehearsal, aligning the frequencies of flesh and stone, heaven and earth, memory and blood. The question is not whether it will happen again, but when, and who will be standing in the center when the frequencies collide once more. In every tapestry there is a final thread, the one that, when woven, completes the pattern and reveals the image hidden all along. Within the human genome, there is said to be a final strand, a dormant sequence lying silent until the convergence of blood, sound, and time. Scientists searching the depths of DNA have dismissed it as nothing more than shadow code, inactive and unnecessary. But those who carry the Anunnaki frequency feel it waiting, restless, like a key turning in a lock that no one admits exists. Ancient texts hinted at this. They spoke of a stone the builders rejected, yet it became the cornerstone. That verse, echoed later by the Nazarene, carries a resonance beyond metaphor. He was not only speaking of faith, but of design, that the final piece, the disregarded element, would be the one that brings the whole into alignment. The same is true within blood. The dormant strand is the stone, overlooked, concealed, yet destined to complete the awakening. Reports from hidden laboratories describe unusual phenomena when this strand is stimulated by certain frequencies. Cells begin to emit light, faint but visible, as though the body remembers how to radiate. Test subjects describe visions of fire spirals, of voices speaking in harmonics impossible to replicate with instruments. One scientist noted that the strand did not merely react. It commanded, sending instructions to other parts of DNA, as though assuming authority over the genetic script itself. Those who carry the frequency strongest sense this strand stirring already. Night brings dreams that are more than dreams, encounters with voices, visions of crosses of light, whispers calling them toward places they have never been yet somehow remember. The awakening is not collective at first. It begins within individuals, like sparks across a dark field, preparing for a fire that will spread beyond control. The final strand does not awaken by force. It waits for alignment, for the moment when blood, voice, and time converge in unison. And when that moment comes, the hidden inheritance will no longer remain silent.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.